Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to our Careers in Peace Building Talk Story series. My name is Jose Barzola. I am the current Conflict and Peace Specialist at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Our talk story today is on A-bomb survivors and peace building and friendships in the making with Dr. Gloria Montebruno Saller. And it'll be moderated by myself, Jose Barzola. Thank you for joining us today to learn about the journey into the profession. Our event today is co-sponsored by the American Society of Hiroshima-Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Survivors, also known as ASA or ASA, the Matsunaga Institute for Peace, and the Conflict and Peace Specialist. That would be some of the work that I've been doing. And thank you for joining us to learn about this part of history. Gloria will address how she became interested in the history of atomic bomb survivors residing in the United States and how her research within the A-bomb communities, both in the U.S. and Japan, allowed her access to historical information that's yet to be published. So stay tuned. There is a book in the making. One of our special guests today is Dr. Gloria Montebruno Saller, who holds a Ph.D. In East Asian languages and cultures from the University of Southern California. After teaching in academia for 20 years, she became an independent research scholar. Currently, she serves as the interim co-president of the American Society of Hiroshima-Nagasaki A-bomb survivors in Southern California. ASA is a group of atomic bomb survivors who were in Hiroshima or Nagasaki in 1945. They represent over 300 members from Hawaii and Los Angeles who have witnessed atrocities that cannot be imagined. Their hope is for peace in the world they live in through the abolishment of all nuclear weapons so that no one else will ever experience the pain and suffering that they have endured. You can learn more about the organization at www.nomorehibakusha.org, and I'll put that link in the chat. So if you all want to learn more about the organization or get involved in them. But thank you again for being here today. I'm going to get us started. I'm going to turn it over to our friend Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you for your introduction. And I see people coming in virtually, and I recognize many of you. Thank you so much for being here today. Some of you I don't know, and I look forward to getting to know you. And yes, so Jose and I met virtually in September, that met in person in October. And I shared my work with him and what I do, who I am, which is still a work in progress. And I guess, like, it is for everyone. But so let me share. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Jose, if it's okay with you. So that here we go. And actually it's taking us right back to oh, and it's not sharing anymore. All right, let's go back here. 1 second. Okay, let's go to the beginning. And here we go. And I see that people are still coming in anyway. So my journey, it's been an interesting journey. And when Jose asked me to participate to this question and answer, to introduce myself, I decided to use peace building as a way in. And of course, the first question that, I asked myself, like, how do we define what is peace building? Can we define peace building? And I thought that using the United Nations definition would be kind of safe, because as I was going through the many definitions of what is peace building, some people say it's a process, it's an approach, it's a collection of activities. And then, as Jose indicated to me, is like, but what is your personal opinion? What do you think that peace building is? And so I told him that I came up with my own definition of peace building, which is a little bit more complex, obviously. And I think that all of these are the elements of peace building. Of course, there is more to this. The question remains, is it up to the individual? Is it up to the community? Is it up to the entire world? But because of what we see today, in the community, in the global community. I also wonder if we shouldn't add common sense to elements of peace building. And the other question that I have is, like, can we afford to leave it all in the hands of the policymakers? And that's one of the reasons that I became involved with this non-nuclear proliferation movement. But the way that my journey in reality started in 2013, when I took my very first group of students to Hiroshima. It was part of a grant that we obtained from the Japanese government, and we traveled to Japan, and of course we included Hiroshima. And I saw how my students reacted to Keiko Ogura's testimony. My approach and my whole life as a researcher, as a scholar, changed on that January 2013, because I resolved to dedicate my life, my professional life, to make the stories of this individual known, and especially to see what had happened with, what does an atomic bomb do to you, to your families? Because this is not just about the atomic bomb survivors in themselves. It's about also the second generation, the third generation. And so as I made myself, I walked through Hiroshima on that cold, very cold January day, I started pondering on the meaning of what it meant to be a survivor. As I say, I had no knowledge whatsoever, even though I held a Ph.D. in Japanese studies, but the focus had never been on this particular aspect of history or even literature. And so it was really an experience of discovery. And so in 2014, I joined the Hiroshima in Peace workshop at Hiroshima Shiritsu Daigaku, which is Hiroshima City University, a private university in Hiroshima. And the intent was to understand how this program could have benefited my students. So I was the only faculty among a group of students, and the student chose me as a speaker that year. So I was able to deliver the speech in front of the Hiroshima mayor. But I could see how the coming together of faculty, not only from Hiroshima City University, but also from the University of Hawaii, really provided a deeper background to what it meant to grow up in Hiroshima as a survivor and then go through life with the scars from that day. On August 6, 2014, I was in Peace Park with this group of individuals. We met with several students that had come from all over Japan, and they had with them the intention of sharing their message of peace. So what it meant, what did peace mean for them? And I took this message back home, and so I obtained most of us know the panels from the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. We had an event, an International Day of Peace in September 2015 at the university where I used to teach. And I was looking for survivors in Southern California. And again, I had no idea about what I was going to embark upon or what I was going to discover. But I was looking for a survivor that would come to the university and give a speech telling us about their experiences. One of the activities that we had on that day, the International Day of Peace, was to create a peace mandala. And the students really gathered throughout the day. We started early in the morning, and they just put together this peace mandala, which came together by the time that the atomic bomb survivor that we had invited gave his eyewitness account. And this individual was Mr. Junji Sarashina. Mr. Junji Sarashina happens to be our current president of ASA, the American Society of Hiroshima and Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Survivors, who is taking a leave of absence. And because of the leave of absence that he's taking, I am currently a co-president of this group along with Mr. Howard Kakita. But Mr. Sarashina attending our event was the beginning of an incredible friendship, and especially of a very peculiar journey, because not only I didn't know much about atomic bomb survivors in Japan, but I didn't know about the presence, and I never even questioned it, never came to mind, realizing that there were American citizens of Japanese descent, non-military personnel that were in Hiroshima, mostly in Hiroshima, on August 6, 1945. And so this is how it all began. It began by getting to know the people in the organization. And when I first met Mr. Sarashina, he was the vice president. Somebody else was the president. The president of the organization at the time was Mrs. Kaz Suyeshi, and she is in the picture at the bottom of this slide in the middle with 3 of my former students. And she was very excited when I proposed that I write the history of ASA, which it wasn't only about ASA at that point, because it really was about how a group of atomic bomb survivors in the United States, which some of them were Japanese nationals, and most of them were Japanese American citizens. So they were American citizens of Japanese descent, started embarking on this project of asking for help for their atomic bomb diseases, afflictions, asking for help to the American government and the Japanese government. The other picture that you see here in this slide, the one on top, there are 3 women in it. To the left, Midori Seino. In the middle is Hiroko Nakano. And in the back to the right is Taeko Okabe. These 3 women are playing a vital role nowadays in my life as my friends, and also as important people in the association, but they're also history books. Midori Seino unfortunately passed away about a year ago, and she and I have become very good friends. But I learned a lot from her, and she was my go-to person whenever I needed something from a historical perspective. And I'll talk more about later about her. So when I was still at the university, teaching at the university, I would get my students involved, not only when we were in Hiroshima, but also when we were here in Southern California. And so I had students that would interview the survivors, that they wrote their undergraduate thesis on that. We would attend events. Some of my former students have ended up working in interfaith organization. Others had taken job at the UN. Other students have returned to Japan, and that's where they teach nowadays. And I'm proud of the work that they're doing. And they were motivated in a way by all the work that they had done in my classes, or just by taking a trip to Japan, or attending some of the social event that ASA was putting together at the time. The event that is the most, the one where we all come together as a community, obviously, is the one on August 6th, where the Koyasan Buddhist Temple in Little Tokyo, we hold a commemoration event. And this has been happening since 1991. Before that, it was happening at different places in Southern California. But Koyasan Buddhist Temple became the place where the Hiroshima peace flame now resides. And it was donated by the city of Hiroshima to the city of Los Angeles during in the 80s on the occasion of the Olympic Games. And Koyasan Buddhist Temple in 1991 became the permanent home of the Hiroshima peace flame. So during this commemoration event, we have people that come from different organizations in Southern California, and we make that a day not only of commemoration, but also a day of peace. My involvement with the Japanese American atomic bomb survivors has moved beyond the annual event. One event before COVID, for example, we had events sponsored through a grant with Cairo, and we would get the Japanese Americans or community together, especially the elderly, in a way, and this before COVID, so that they could get together, talk with one another, and maybe do a little grocery shopping. And it was interesting to see how they would share their own experiences of the past. Of course, what I hold very dear are my trip to Hiroshima. But in 2018, in particular, when I gave two presentations. One was at the War Friendship Center, and the other one was at Hachidori Book Cafe. And it was interesting because I took that trip, and Midori Seino and I were both in Hiroshima. And I felt that it was very important for me to have that connection there. And it felt deep that I was there in Hiroshima with her on that day. And she shared with me her story, which she hadn't done. And I knew that there were many people that were trying to get her story. But she opened up to me, and I will be always grateful for that experience, for the trust that she had in me. As I was saying before, these three women are playing a vital role in not only my personal life, as you can see from this pictures, but in my professional life as well. I learn from them every day, and they are incredible support to the whole Japanese American community of survivors in Southern California. But what gets even more interesting is the relationship that I was able to form with the Nisei Hibakusha, second generation Hibakusha, and the Sansei Hibakusha, the third generation Hibakusha. And these are very dear to me because after I interview their parents, I was able to interview the children and then the grandchildren. And in the picture that you see to the bottom right, this is Mr. Wataru Namba's grandson. And he's there between two pictures that were taken by Daryl Miho. Daryl Miho is one of our Friends of Hibakusha member of ASA. And in 2019, there was an exhibit at the Japanese American National Museum. And it's probably the first exhibit under the mushroom cloud that also housed the history of Japanese Americans atomic bomb survivors. And so we were able to include the history of the Japanese American atomic bomb survivors as part of the exhibit on that day. And so to me, it actually kind of all started with Mr. Satoru Arai. He is one of the original founder of CABS, which is the Coalition of Atomic Bomb Survivors U.S.A., which in the 1990s split. And so the Northern California is called CABS and the Southern California is called ASA. But Mr. Arai is an amazing record keeper. And so when I first met him in Hiroshima, because he moved back to Hiroshima when he retired, he had binders with all the activities and original documents that he kept from the activities that CABS conducted in the 1970s. And so everything that was done by the North American-based atomic bomb survivors in order to obtain medical relief from both the American government and the Japanese government. So Mr. Arai had all his material organized in 3 binders in chronological order. And so it was a way for me to start to understand how the social movement by a group of individuals that spoke little English or none was able to take their fight to the U.S. Congress in an attempt to obtain medical benefits for their radiation diseases. So the majority of them had suffered radiation sickness, but over the years they had developed other illnesses. And they all kind of understood back in the 70s that all their illness and ailments were in a way related to the atomic bomb. And so they came together as a very small group in the beginning. And the group grew to almost 1,200 members, 1,200 members at the beginning of the 1970s. So Mr. Arai is a Nisei Hibakusha, so a second generation Hibakusha, originally from Hawaii. Very proud to say that he was born at the feet of Diamond's Head, and who moved as he was in Japan during the war, then he returned to the United States. And when he retired, he moved back to Japan. So he's one of the people that I go back to often when I return to Hiroshima. These are some of the pictures that will tell you about the kind of community that we've created and that have joined in me with their stories and their histories, and they are allowing me to put in writing everything that they saw and they witnessed at the time. Because my goal is to make sure that this chapter of American history is also told. As an educator, the one thing that I notice is missing, one of the many things that's missing from the history books, especially the one don't know about how there were American citizens, again, of non-military personnel in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. And I focus on Hiroshima because the majority of individuals that migrated to the United States from Japan were from Hiroshima Prefecture. So they would migrate to Hawaii, and then Hawaii became the stepping stone for some of them to migrate to the west coast of the United States, so on the Pacific coast. And so ASA in 2018, so the American Society of Hiroshima-Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Survivors obtained an official recognition by the City Council, the Los Angeles City Councils. And this was one of the last times that we were all together at City Hall with some other representative of the community. And we were proud of this recognition by the city. In my work as a researcher in putting together the history of the North American-based atomic bomb survivors, both Japanese Americans and Japanese nationals, I've also had the opportunity to meet with the doctors that are involved in this biannual medical examinations. So these biannual medical examinations have officially been taking place since 1977. And they started in reality 1974. And a group of doctors from Japan arrives to the United States, and they're sponsored by the local division of the medical association. So whenever they come here in Southern California, they're sponsored by the Los Angeles County Medical Association, and they conduct medical examination. Well, in the past, they were medical examination, now they're medical consultation. So this past October, I was actually able to join the doctor in Hawaii as they conducted the medical examinations and consultations on the survivors that reside on the islands of Hawaii. So I was in Honolulu. But I also met, and this time in Hiroshima, with Dr. Ito Chikako. Dr. Ito was also the president of the Hiroshima Prefecture Medical Association, and she's the one that wrote a book on the history of this movement from the United States to obtain this medical help and support from Japan. And my work builds upon hers, especially when it comes to creating a chronology of event and understanding how this all evolved, how this all happened and took place. So when I met with Dr. Ito in October 2019, she was actually kind of surprised that I would rely on her book, because she said she had kind of forgotten about the fact that she not only put everything in a chronological order, but she used mostly Hiroshima and Japan-based newspaper to really tell the story of the American-based survivors that were trying to get recognition, both in Japan and in the United States, for what were their medical afflictions suffered after the atomic bomb. So my journey has been a very interesting one, especially since I left academia. Not only I have met more survivors throughout the years, and I've been able to sit down with them and get their testimonies, but I've been introduced to a community this year. And the other one is Japanese American citizens as survivors of the Hiroshima atomic bombing, for which I just obtained an extension by the publisher. And the reason for the extension is that when I visited Honolulu this past October, I was handed a 650 pages oral history. And it's an oral history of Japanese American and Japanese atomic bomb survivors that reside on the island of Hawaii. And it dates to the 1980s. This is incredible material. And I felt that, first of all, I was glad that this person handed this to me, but I also feel that it's my duty to include this material in the book because it's vital. ASA not only is an association here in Southern California, but it also had a chapter in Hawaii. It hadn't been as active as ASA here in Southern California has been, but when I was handed this material, I realized how they started, and this work is very important. And so I contacted the publisher as soon as I returned here in Southern California, and I made them aware of this finding, and they granted me an extension until 2025 for the book, realizing, because they realized that this material has to be included in the book. And this book has been in the making for a while now, and the reason is because of COVID first, and then because of life events, and now this oral history material. These are some of the names of the people that, and is a very short list of people that over this past 9 years have been involved with my projects, and there are several. As I say, the list was very long, so I started taking some of the names and put them together. And some of the organizations as well. There have been people that have contributed enormously to my research project, and there have been people that have been supported me in this project in different ways. And I'm thankful to all of them for the work that they've done for me and with me. And I know that there is so much more that needs to be done. So this is a very short introduction to my work and to what I do, and I'm pretty sure that the questions out there are many. Jose, if you like to open it to the floor for questions, I'll try to answer them. I don't think I have all the answers, but the ones I have, I'll be more than happy to. And I see some people here that might have those answers. So there is actually a student that I'm currently mentoring through her master program at the University of Nagasaki. She happens to be on this call, and so I might be calling on her if there's something that I don't know, because I know she is doing an amazing job as a researcher. And so I might call on her to answer some of these questions. So there you have it.
Thank you so much for that deep dive into partly, your journey into this field. I just want to point out for the audience. When I learned that in 2014, she got to Gloria got to do the Hiroshima Peace Program, the Matsunaga Institute has actually been sending students to the Hiroshima Peace Program since I believe the program started in 2004, or no, 2003, I think. And in 2004 is when the Matsunaga Institute got involved with Professor Brian Hallett kind of leading, getting a talk out there. And then every year for about 16 or so years, they would send anywhere from 2 to 5 students. And so it's been, I can truly attest how revolutionary and transformative a program it's been. And there's a lot of these great programs out there. And so thank you for, creating that in California, for, passing it forward for other students to be able to take on. I have questions, but I want to make first, any of the audience, you are able to unmute yourselves if you have questions. So please feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I can
Point out
move
that
along.
so Mr. Sarashina, who is took a leave of absence from ASA for the next year, he's just joined in, and he was just waving at all of us. So there are ASA
Oh,
members in the audience. So Mr. Sarashina is one. There is, I saw Miss Hiroko Nakano and Okabe, Taeko Okabe as well. And also from Northern California, we have the president of CABS, Mariko Lindsay, is in attendance, as well as Jerry Honda, who's the president of Friends of Hibakusha. And then I recognize several people from the World Friendship Center, former directors. Joanne is there with her husband, Roger Edmark, and I saw Denny somewhere, Denny Hotto somewhere as well. So there is a lot of representation from the Friends of Hibakusha community, and some Hibakusha are here as well. So I just wanted to point it out. Jose?
all right. Well, if no one has any questions at the moment, maybe they will be inspired as time goes on. But I mean, one of the questions just so you are a storyteller yourself, collecting stories and being able to share them further. For folks who might you share some of the hurdles or challenges that you come across and how you've been able to overcome those? To be able, it's been almost 10 years since your Hiroshima Peace experience.
It's as I say, when I was in Honolulu, I was just there as a representative of ASA, and I was looking for survivors to interview, and I never expected to be handed 650 pages of oral history. And so as an historian, I felt amazing. I was overjoyed, and then I started to panic because I'm like, okay, now what do I do with all of this? And so I was, I talked to a colleague of mine who's also in attendance, Professor Sato Kyoko from Stanford University. And I told us this has to be included. I cannot not include this material. And so it's a journey, and every day is something new. And every survivors that I meet and that I talk to, and they share their journey, this is not anymore about their atomic bomb experience. This is becoming more about their life afterwards, So what happened afterwards? How do you cope with all of that? And nowadays it's becoming about how do you tell your, the grandchildren, and what are the grandchildren going to do with this legacy? So I know, for example, that Mr. Sarashina's granddaughter traveled to Japan over the summer, and she was in Hiroshima. I haven't talked to her yet since she returned, but I wonder, how did it make you feel going back after so many years? Because she was there in 2017, and now you're back there as an adult, as a college student. So what are you feeling? What are you going to do with this legacy? And that's one of the things that I've been getting the most from Nisei Hibakusha, from second generation Hibakusha, especially when I was in Hawaii. Their question was whether there was a support group of some kind for second generation Hibakusha. They wanted to know, and we know that in Japan there are, those kind of support group, but there are none in the United States. And so I've been trying to understand what kind of support they're looking for. But I know that there is an interest in some of them to get together and start talking to one another. The Nisei Hibakusha might be in their 50s and 60s today. And so they might have been silent prior, but now I guess that they really do want their voices to be heard. So Jose, you told me, like, you got the message from Kathleen Birkinshaw. She's a classic example of that. So she didn't know about her mother experience until late in life, later on. And then she wrote the book, and then she became extremely involved. And she was one of the people that had asked me when I first met her whether there was a support group for Nisei and Sansei Hibakusha. Yes.
Thank you. Well, we're getting questions in the audience now. So one of them from Joanne is, are there Hibakusha organizations in Northwest United States?
They are in Seattle. I'm not sure if they are. Yeah, there is one in Seattle. I see Mariko Lindsay that. Yeah, there is one in Seattle, and they have their own webpage. I think they work out of a library, the main public library in Seattle. The Japanese American community in Seattle is quite extensive, as a matter of fact. Yes. Then I see a question.
Yep, from Roya. I'm curious how well acquainted people from Hiroshima and Nagasaki are with social justice and human rights issues of the continued testing of nuclear weapons in the Pacific. I'm also curious as to why we speak so much about Hiroshima, but not as much about Nagasaki.
Well, they know about the nuclear testing in the Pacific because of Barbara Reynolds and the World Friendship Center. So the World Friendship Center is located in Hiroshima. Barbara Reynolds, I'm not sure if you know who she was, but she and her husband pretty much took their boat right into in Bikini when they were doing the nuclear experimentations. And they were arrested, and they were by helicopter. They were transported back to Hawaii. Her husband, who was a atomic bomb casualty commission doctor, he was arrested. Then he was released. So Barbara Reynolds returned to Hiroshima and founded the World Friendship Center. And the goal of the friend, and say we have several former directors of the World Friendship Center here. One of the things that you get as you visit the World Friendship Center is really the work that Barbara Reynolds and her successor have done in making aware of the nuclear testing in the Pacific. As to why we speak much more about Hiroshima and not Nagasaki, as I say, for my own research, the majority of the survivors that I work with are originally from Hiroshima Prefecture, not from Nagasaki. There is a lot of work that has been done on the Nagasaki atomic bomb survivors as well. The Nagasaki Peace Memorial Museum holds an extensive collection of testimonies as well. I can't answer to that part of the question.
We have another one from Imari about, thank you so much for your outstanding informative presentation. I'm curious if you have heard of any social and cultural impacts of atomic bombs aside from biomedical impacts, especially from Hibaku Nisei?
Nisei, Hibaku
Yeah.
Nisei. I haven't heard from Hibaku Nisei. Hibaku Nisei aren't talking much publicly yet. They haven't gone public yet. So I have not heard about that. Probably something that will come. I know that in Japan, yes, they have. But here in the United States, no, not yet. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add on to the question about Hiroshima, not so much Nagasaki, I'll chime in a little bit just from my own experience of having visited Nagasaki and worked with folks in both cities, I've gathered what I've been able to attain so far. One, I think there's a larger heritage of folks from Hiroshima living, especially here in Hawaii. But I think in general, partly it's because it was the first place that was bombed. And folks tend to sometimes focus on that. And I think also there's a little bit of history as far as the rebuilding of it. When Hiroshima, right after it was bombed, the leadership there quickly went to the government to get funding to rebuild. And, you know, well, Nagasaki took some time to, so if you ever have an opportunity to visit out there, it's like two separate worlds that you're stepping into. And so not to say that one's more important than the other, but just to kind of give a little context as to why it is that we hear more stories from one side than the other. I think Hiroshima probably had at least 7 or 10 years, you know, of time to be able to rebuild and get the word out there and start building various collaboratives of support and getting the so I think that's one of the things that may have shifted the conversation over time. But I highly encourage folks to visit both if you have the chance. It's truly an eye-opener, and there's just wonderful opportunities to see that just because you go to one doesn't mean that you'll get the same perspective from the other, because there's a lot of history too, with Nagasaki being one of the only ports that was open, and the various influences in the culture. Just every other block there's a church, you know. So
it's interesting because at one event that I attended here in Southern California, it was in 18, I think, I actually met a Russian-speaking survivor, a white woman. And it was strange to like, and she said she was from Nagasaki. But that was because her father was a Russian soldier that ended up in Nagasaki before the war. And the mom was a Japanese woman. And so, and she spoke fluent Russian and Japanese and English. And so that was surprising to me. But I also think that Nagasaki, in a way, always, because of its location, and I think that Professor Sato can help me here, I think there's always been kind of a distance from the rest of the country, and also because it's been more westernized compared to the rest of the of Japan. And the majority also of prisoners of wars were in Nagasaki. So when you talk about foreign atomic bomb survivors, most of the time they are military personnel. So you have many foreign military personnel that are atomic bomb survivors. And that's because they were prisoner of wars right where the atomic bomb was dropped in Nagasaki. So if you visited Nagasaki, you probably walked to the area where the jails were, and that's where all the foreign military people were as prisoners. So there are lists, and they are entitled to medical benefits. They do qualify as atomic bomb survivors. Some of them do have the techo as well. So they are recognized from as casualty as well when they pass by the Hiroshima Memorial Museum, the Nagasaki Memorial Museum as well. And then I just saw that Professor Yamane, Kazuyo Yamane, she just put into the chat that there is a Kyoto Hibaku Nisei Sansei Association. Hi, Kazuyo-san. She just put that she's one of my contact in Japan. And so this is very interesting. So the person that asked earlier, say here in the United States, it doesn't exist yet, but there is in Japan. There is a question here. Could you tell us a bit more about the oral narratives you have received? Are the videos in Japanese or in English? Okay. So I was explaining to Jose earlier, this is typed, 657 pages typed. There are about 30 survivors that were interviewed for the specific project. There are tapes. I don't have the tapes. I simply have the script right now. I requested, the person that handed me this material, I asked all this question that if you are a researcher, if you're a student, these are all the questions everybody wants to know. So the question that I asked is, who funded this project? Because I want to know who funded the project. Where are the tapes? Because half of the interviews were conducted in English and half were conducted in Japanese. And I only have the translations into English. So I need to listen to the Japanese translation, to the Japanese original as well. I do have the names of the people that translated the material. And I do have the names of the people that conducted the interviews. But in order to give full credit and for everything, I also need to have the IRB paperwork, the Internal Review Board, because I need to know who gave authorization for this project. And so, I say, if you are a scholar or researcher, you know what I'm talking about. So I actually have not shared this content even with my colleague, and we're working on it with Professor Sato, just because I'm still waiting on this information, which are in the mail, apparently. As for the tapes, and this is just a hunch that I have, but I feel that they are at the University of Hawaii. I have this feeling that they are at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. Because the transcript and the transcripts, some of the interviews are on 2 tapes, some are very long and some are very short. As for the demographic of the individuals that were interviewed, I would say it's half of them are Japanese native, Japanese nationals that migrated to the United States after the end of the war. And the other half are Hawaiian-born Japanese American citizens that were in Japan during World War II and that returned to Japan, to the islands, starting in 1947 when they were allowed to leave Japan. The majority are women. There are more women than men. The majority are women, though. So, they're all originally from Hiroshima, a couple from Nagasaki, and only one person is from another area outside of Hiroshima Prefecture. That's all the data that I have. So, and half of them did not disclose their names, just their initials. And the other half did. So that's also interesting. And we're talking 1982. So if you put it in perspective, it kind of makes sense. But it is my understanding that the person, the person that took the lead on this project can identify all the people that were interviewed. So can give the proper name, the names for all these individuals. As soon as I have more, I'll be happy to share, because this has been amazing. Yeah, and I'm reading through them. So thank you so much for the question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for all this information. That was me who asked that question. Thank you. And then I also want to say thank you for your great presentation. Born and raised in Hiroshima, it was very encouraging that you have been working so hard on bring those survivors living in the U.S. into, bring into the light.
Thank you.
So thank you. I actually have another question, if you do not mind asking me.
Sure.
Is that okay with that typing?
Sure, go ahead.
It's been a huge challenge in Japan, and of course overseas as well. I'm sure that the survivors are getting older and older, and then there's only a small numbers of people left now. And the Hiroshima's challenge is, so who's going to tell the story now? And then has that been an issue among the American survivors as well?
I know it's an issue in Japan because I know several younger people that are trained now as oral historians to tell the stories of their grandparents. That's something that we have not discussed yet, that we have not brought up, and it's a great question. And that's why I try to get closer to the grandchildren of the hibakusha, because I think it's going to be their responsibility eventually to tell the stories. I'm not sure about the Nisei, the children, because they were the environment in which they grew up was different, and so, but for the grandchildren, I would love to be able to have this conversation with them one day. The fact that they showed up at the exhibit in 2020 when I had the opportunity to take them on this visit to the Japanese American National Museum, it was very telling, of course. And the fact that do return to Hiroshima, not only to visit grandma and grandpa, or to visit where grandma and grandpa were born, it means that a seed is there. There is a seed has been planted, obviously, is just waiting. And, the fact that they go back, it means that the seed is being watered, right? So it's just waiting so I have hope. I'm hopeful. And that's definitely something that I will bring up at our next meeting. Thank you so much for the question. Yes, thank you.
I will share that over the past few years that I've been collaborating with both Nagasaki and Hiroshima, I know that the Hiroshima Atomic Bomb Museum has a program where young folks can go through a training process to learn about the oral histories and basically be the voice that shares those histories, whether it's them presenting it, whether it's a PowerPoint or some animation that's been created. So they're exploring different ways to kind of keep the stories alive. I know it will never be the same as, coming directly from the hibakusha, but and also at this day and age with technology, a lot of those hibakusha stories are being recorded now, so they are available that's another, thank goodness for technology. But yeah, I think that just trying to adapt as best as possible. I know one thing that actually got to experience was a play called Peace on Your Wings, which shares the story of Sadako Sasaki, and it was inspiring just to see these youth taking on these stories and sharing it. They actually got to visit Hiroshima this past summer. Hopefully in preparation for the 80th anniversary in a couple of years, they'll be able to kind of travel the city. So another way that, youth are able to kind of carry the message forward. And then lastly, I wanted to share about how there's a collaborative between Hiroshima City and Nagasaki City that started back in 1995 to raise awareness. They have an exhibit with like 30 panels about the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that they've donated to different parts of the world and have been able to have these exhibits. I was fortunate enough to have an exhibit donated here in Hawaii at the end of 2020, and just this past spring we were able to showcase the exhibit here at the University of Hawaii. So just little things, that we can kind of keep the message alive. But we have someone in the audience with their hand up, so I want to turn it over. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Kyoko-san.
Hi, before I speak, I think I saw Joanne Sims raising hands earlier, so I want to give her the spot first.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Joanne. Joanne is actually one of the former director of the World Friendship Center, her husband.
And actually, I figured out how to type in the question, and so you've already addressed it. Thank you.
Actually chairs the American committee of the World Friendship Center. So yes, Sato-san.
Yes, thank you, Gloria. It's so great to see some of the faces I know here too. Nakano-san, Sarashina-san, and I saw the Okabe-san, and then also Kakita Howard-san there in the audience. I think question for Gloria is that I think you have kind of developed a very special relationship to survivors in the LA area. And then, so what are I think you asked this question, but I also want to ask you this question. Like, what are the most urgent needs right now from other people? And then I also wanted to ask people who are here, like, what was it about Gloria that you felt? I mean, I know it's like in front of her, so, but it's like, how do we connect to the survivor community the way Gloria did? And then because we all feel dedicated to like, what can we do? But, what is the, what are the kind of like, I don't know, what allowed her to be close to you and then to gain your trust? Because I think many of us want to do that. And then, it's, yeah, so that's.
I'm humbled. I am absolutely humbled by the trust that these individuals have in me. And it started with Soeshi-san. And I remember her putting her arm around me. If you knew Soeshi-san, she was teeny tiny, but she managed to put her arm around me. And she said, I trust you. And I got that from Mr. Sarashina. I got that from Nakano-san, from Okabe-san, from Mariko Lindsay, from every survivor that I am. And I can't put it into words. What do they need right now? Right now, what they need is to get their stories out. And also they need, I think, an understanding that they're aging and that they can't do what they used to do. And so they really need to pass the torch to somebody else. And I know that they want to find those individuals that can keep their message of peace alive. And so it's something that we talk about and we discuss about. Their needs right now are medical needs. And it's the truth here as it is in Japan, as you know very well. But I also know that as they age and unfortunately, as we see them passing away, is that their story, and I always try to make sure that this comes through when we talk, is that their story matters, their experience matters, everything that they've done in life matters. And a bad day in my life will never compare to a bad day in their life. And that's how I live my life. Say, I can have a horrible, terrible day and it will never compare. And I will remember the first time Mr. Sarashina spoke to my students and seeing, 6'2", 6'3" tall kids crying, realizing, and it didn't need images, it didn't need animation, it didn't need anything, just his words. Because if people listen, the message gets through. As for the rest, I can't answer that. So I don't know, how and why they did that. Why did they open up to me? Why they allowed me into their lives? That's a question for them. I don't know if anybody wants to answer that. Howard? Mr. Sarashina? I don't know. Mr. Sarashina, yes?
Is it okay to speak now?
Yes.
Well, she was very kind and courteous, and she didn't impress. And she cared for the atomic bomb survivor. That was the kind approach. Not only that, she was able to communicate with many A-bomb survivors from Hiroshima in Japanese language. That was the key, your kindness, and be able to communicate in the language the ladies or the men survivors wanted to hear. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Sarashina. Thank you. Thank you. Jose, you disappeared.
No, I'm here. But I do want to and thank you so much for that insight. I greatly appreciate you all for being here. We did have our hand up from Holt Ohana.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, hi, Gloria, thank you for today's session. I don't have any personal connection like everyone here. This is my first time being in a session like this, but from what I heard and what you just shared with everyone as to why maybe people were open, for me, my husband and I watched a documentary, I think it was on YouTube, and it was talking about the sailors that was there. And these sailors explained that they were miles and miles away. And they gave their story in the most detailed, horrific, but amazing description that frightened us. And they too felt, some of them described it to where they cried for their moms, you know, and that's, I wasn't born then, but just hearing these sailors share their story made me hurt so bad for the people that are in Japan. And I live across the Arizona Memorial, and we have Pearl Harbor. Yeah, so, and this is my homeland. So the experience my people went through of, you know, what you guys probably know the story. For me, hearing the sailors talk, I can only imagine the stories of the people from Japan, what they will say, or the people and your story sharing with them. So for me, I think that's probably why the connection you made with everyone. And so, yeah, I sorry, I didn't know if that made any sense to anyone, but to me, that's the reason why I'm here.
I think you're referring to the documentary Radio Bikini. And that's the one.
Yes.
That's the one where they interview the American Navy sailors.
Yes.
At Castle Bravo. It's a very powerful documentary. It used to be available on Netflix and it isn't anymore. Radio Bikini it was nominated for an Academy Award that year. And it tells the story of the American military personnel that was told to pretty much, and you know, this is the same story of the American military that were doing the experimentation in the Nevada desert, that they were told, you know, when you see a detonation, you go for it, you go toward the detonation, you don't run away from it. And so whenever they would experiment in the Nevada desert, this guys, they would go toward the radiation cloud, and then they would rotate the personnel every 2 weeks. So when it came down to these individuals, these people becoming sick, the government would say, sorry, we don't know if your ailments are really radiation related because you were only there for 2 weeks. But and there is a book on this topic, but being that they would be sent, and then when actually after Radio Bikini, and I believe that the guy talks about it, when the guy brought the lawsuit against the American government, that's when that particular side of the Pentagon where the documents were kept burned down. Just that particular wing where all the record was kept on this projects of the Nevada testing. So all the medical record burned down, so they don't have any. So yeah, so it's Radio Bikini. Yeah, it's a very powerful documentary, and I've used it over the year. I showed it to my student. Thank you so much for bringing it up. Thank you. I see that.
Thank you. I was able to find the documentary online, so y'all can catch it. It's about an hour long.
Yeah. Yeah,
1988.
And I think Professor Yamane, she put another link for the No More Hiroshima-Nagasaki Museum. Yeah, if you are in Kyoto, you want to visit the World Peace Museum, and it was an amazing experience for me, and I'm glad that I was able to have that experience. With Professor Yamane at the university. That is, what is the name of the university? Oh my gosh.
Ritsumeikan University.
Ritsumeikan Daigaku. Yes, it was there. The World Museum on the ground of Ritsumeikan University. Yeah, it really is amazing. Thank you.
Hey, Gloria.
Yes, hi, Howard.
Hi. You might want to mention that many of us, Hibakusha, have documented our story in form of testimonial. And they're archived in the Japanese American National Museum downtown. Also, I also videotaped the testimonial for, what's it, Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. So that's also archived there. So I think you can find maybe hundreds of testimonials there, some of which is in English.
There are several in English. The only thing, and I was talking about the people at the museum, is trying to identify the ones that are Japanese, the Japanese American. Also because they are on two different servers, apparently, because some of the Japanese American recorded it in Japanese, their testimony, and some others recorded it in English. And some recorded in the 1980s or 90s, and some recorded very recently. So we were discussing about how probably to group this together and make them more visible. Because as they are right now, they're just, so like if you were to look for the Korean testimony, you'd be able to find them right away, in a sense. And the Chinese testimony, you'd be able to find them right away. If you're looking for a Japanese American testimony or someone that is an American citizen of Japanese descent, you would have to know the name in order to find it. And because it doesn't say that in the list. So, but I'm talking with them about it. Yeah.
Great.
Yep. Thank you, Howard. Yep.
Also wanted to share so as I alluded to earlier, we did have an exhibit here at the University of Hawaii Manoa in the spring semester between March and April, and we called it Building a Nuclear Free World. We did, understanding that there's only limited space to showcase, you know, the images, but we also understood it's a larger conversation about, you know, the multiple places that have been negatively impacted by nuclear bombs and just testing. And so I'm just going to share a website that we kind of put together, which has a little bit of the program, but also a video by, you know, Kathy Jetnil Kijinier, who actually visited Bikini Atoll and stood on the dome. It's a poem that I encourage you to watch. There's also something called the Hiroshima Archive as well as the Nagasaki Archive. So it's like a map and you can see lots of little dots. As you click on the dots, a face pops up with some of the testimonies from the Hibakusha. There's also the nuke map, which is something that can be utilized for educational purposes to showcase folks, whoever they may be in the world, like, hey, this is the impact depending upon the type of bomb that may have been dropped. There's also something called, now there's these virtual reality goggles, and there's a documentary called On the Morning You Wake, which actually references January 13th, 2018 here in Hawaii when there was a false missile alarm. It's a Saturday morning at like 8 something in the morning. So for like 38 minutes, folks had no idea what was coming next, but just the trauma that so it's 3 stories. It's about 45 minutes total, but for folks who are here from Hawaii who joined, who happen to be there, including myself, I'll share that viewing the documentary opened up. It's interesting to see how the brain works and how we shut down certain things that are not pleasant to remember. And the documentary brought back a lot of those emotions. And so it's just so important to just kind of keep those stories alive. And then there's also, we kind of worked with Google Maps and created a specific nuclear test map that identifies a lot of the testing that's been done across the Asia Pacific, especially someone mentioned in the continent and how the radioactivity that's there. And then there are multiple virtual talk stories that we did, and so those are referenced there as well. But yeah, just some resources that we've kind of created, and I look forward to our next exhibit because as folks are sharing so many wonderful resources, I'm like, I'm going to save these to continue to, you know, educate the community further.
Yeah, I see that. And Professor Yamane.
We lost the audio.
Gloria?
I'm right here. Hello?
I have a question
Yes, Mr.
or
Sarashina?
a statement. Yes, is it okay?
Sure.
Well, I'm sorry that I joined you people late. My son had a cataract operation and he's dropped in. So
Okay.
I heard you people telling who's going to tell the story of the atomic bomb survivor. Like myself, I'm almost 95, so definitely I won't be able to continue this not too long. The thing is this, we have to take care of the Hibakusha Nisei. In our organization, we have approximately 20 or 30 Hibakusha Niseis. And they are the one take their mother or father to take the biannual physical examination. But the Hibakusha Niseis are not allowed to have the examination by the doctors from Japan. If we don't take care the Hibakusha Niseis in our organization or throughout the world, nobody will be able to tell the story of the Hibakusha like myself, because I'll be gone. So we have to allow the Hibakusha Nisei, like my son, to also get the biannual examination by the doctors from Japan. That is the way we have the Hibakusha and the Nisei together, and they'll be able to tell. Therefore, I'm also asking the government of Japan to allow the biannual medical examination for the Hibakusha Nisei.
Yeah. So in Japan, this is still happening. So Nisei Hibakusha in Japan do get their medical examination, and I think it's annually right now. I don't know if Kyoko, is it annually? I think Yamane Sensei, she would know. It's annually. In the foreign the Hibakusha residing abroad, the Nisei, the last time that they get their examination was in 2017. And then because the Kencho, the government took over from the Hiroshima City Prefecture, that's when they stopped the medical.
Right. That's right.
So, but when I was in Hawaii, and this is something that was brought up, when I was in Hawaii, a lot of the Nisei Hibakusha were the one dropping off the parents for the medical examinations. And so this has come up. So I was talking to the representative from the Japanese government about this in an email exchange. And I brought this up with her, saying that maybe you should, because, Dr. Matsumura published gave the interview to the Chugoku Shimbun, and he mentioned in there that, he will have to revisit the medical examination. But I do know that this government representative brought to his attention the fact that if we include the Nisei Hibakusha again, more people will show up. Because one of the main issues that the Hibakusha have nowadays is to get to their medical examinations, because they have transportation problems. So if you take, for example, I was in Honolulu, and you would think that it's logistically it's an easy thing to do, but it really isn't, because traffic in Honolulu is horrendous and worse than LA at times. When the doctor visited Northern California, they had to go to 4 different places for the medical examinations. And we're talking about extremely long distances. So transportation, so if we include the Nisei Hibakusha, it's possible that the older Hibakusha don't drive anymore. But if we include the Nisei Hibakusha, maybe the Nisei Hibakusha, while they drive themselves to the examination, they can bring their parents as well. So that is something that has been suggested already.
Well, Gloria, I think when you say Hibakusha Nisei, that means, it could be 100 or 200 people. But in our organization, like Atomic Bomb Survivors in Los Angeles, we're talking about 20 or 30 maximum hibakusha. Maybe that's the way it is in Hawaii too. We're not talking about 100 and 200 people.
Right.
So,
It's just members of the organization. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Jose?
Thank you. I love how we've gotten over time, but people are still, I'm happy to stay on as long as our speakers welcome, happy to stay with us as well. But oh, we have a question. Some of us researchers of nuclear history and politics use the concept of global hibakusha. Takahashi and Takamine 2006 to connect the issues of Hiroshima-Nagasaki to larger circles of people exposed to radiation, from nuclear tests, uranium mining, nuclear site work, to contamination work, residents near nuclear accidents, etc. There's much research on trivialization of the effects of radiation on human health and the environment. Thank you.
And I think I mentioned this to Kyoko, thank you for bringing it up. But also one of the things that got me into this was realizing that I'm a global hibakusha because I happened to be in Italy when Chernobyl happened. And so I was at the receiving end of the cloud, the radiation cloud that hovered over Europe for a long time. And we were told only 10 days after the meltdown that was happening. And so I realized that I was a global hibakusha when I was at the Hiroshima and Peace workshop, when it was brought up to my attention, a map that showed that the radiation stopped right at the feet of the Alps in northern Italy. And I happen to be from Torino, northern Italy. You know, if you know the Shroud of Turin, that's where I'm from. And so it was interesting to me realizing that almost at the same time, everybody in my family developed thyroid disease. And when I attended the Hiroshima and Peace program, one faculty pointed out to me and say, it's possible that you all were deeply impacted by the Chernobyl cloud. And so when I conveyed this to the endocrinologist that was following me here, she didn't even think about it. And then she started looking into that. And she said, it's possible, yes. And I have lost high school friends to thyroid cancer. So going back through the years and realizing how these people have passed away, and they've all passed because of thyroid cancer, which is the main, cancer associated with radiation. So yes, thank you for bringing this up, Kyoko. I really appreciate it. And yes, there is a lot of trivialization, unfortunately, going on in government institutions all over the world, unfortunately. But we can't, we have to step up and let them understand that it's our health and it matters to us. Absolutely.
Thank you for continuing to, fight the good fight, as they say. And I think one of the things I always like to let folks know is that there's a big distinction, if you look at history, between the actions that government leaders have done and then what the people really wanted. I doubt that the community really cared about border issues. They most of the times folks just want to live their lives. And so thank you for carrying on those stories and giving to light. Oh, we have a comment. Is there any research on, or question on the testing that occurred in New Mexico in 1945 and its effects at that time, summer of 1945? There were many Japanese internees about 100 miles away in Santa Fe.
No, I've never read anything about that in particular. The Downwinder stories came out afterwards, and usually the Downwinders are the people in Utah, Arizona, and if it's in New Mexico, it's not because of the 1945. The Trinity was very small. Trinity was everybody say was a joke compared to what it was used in Hiroshima and then in Nagasaki. So that it would have not traveled that far. However, what is interesting is to see how when you take the totality of the over 1,000 detonations that happened in Nevada. When you take the totality of that and you spread it on a map, which do exist because you can find it easily online, you see how that affected everybody. I mean, there are even maps of how the bikini testing impacted the United States and how that cloud traveled and reached the United States. So there are other ones, but not this one in particular. As I say, Trinity was very, very small.
If I could add about New Mexico.
Yeah.
There was the whole contamination at Church Rock, which is the uranium mine tailings, breaking, and then it's considered more radioactivity released than 3 Mile Island. And yet it's on the Diné Nation land. It's basically Navajo land. And then there's very little public attention, throughout the history, but there is still a contamination there. And a lot of Navajo activists fighting to get it tested and, the do more cleanup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. And thank you. This is a wonderful audience. You all are doing such special work in your own special fields. I know, Gloria, you've been wonderful to kind of point out some folks. I also want to just point out, Hiromi Peterson, Naomi Hirano Miso, who's with us. Even Imari, it's great to see you. I just realized it's been a while. Imari I connected with her because she's I believe from Nagasaki, but has been doing work bringing, especially during the pandemic, we connected, and she was getting folks from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and other parts, and then brought us over here in Hawaii to meet virtually and have these conversations. And I think it's ever so important. Hiromi and Naomi are very instrumental in getting high school students to be having these conversations. So I think it's multi-layers of generations that we need to get involved and continue to have that awareness so that it's not just the sole responsibilities of the hibakusha, and it is really, it's a human responsibility to make sure we don't have this repetition, history repeat itself. I don't know if there's any other questions. I have just some couple lingering questions, Gloria. I always love to ask folks is how do you take care of yourself? I mean, you are taking care of lots of stories. And so if you have any words of wisdom on self-care, hopefully that's not the challenging question of today.
I don't have any suggestions right now. I read more. I read some more. It's a lot to take in. Yes, it is a lot to take in. But it's something that I do because I have this sense of responsibility. I don't know. I feel like I have to do it. I don't know where it comes from. I have no idea where it's coming from. So it never feels heavy. It never feels like a duty or I have to do. It's different. It's something that it's in me right now. So I just do it. Yeah. So it's hard to detach myself from it. It's a living creature. Yes, it is. But I do sleep occasionally. So that's
well, and I don't know if you have any words of wisdom for future generations who want to be writers or want to pursue this type of research or go into this type of area.
You won't get rich. That's a fact. That's if you want to get rich, this is not the place to go. If you want to have the bestseller book in the bookstore, this is not the place to go. And it's sad to say that in a way. I think you need to be tenacious. You need to be persistent. You need to be motivated. What motivates you? It's what you need to find. What is that motivates you to keep going? And the people I work with motivate me every day. And so it's their life stories, their experiences are motivation for me every day. As a writer, it's the hardest thing to put on paper other people's experiences. It's the hardest thing to put on paper other people's experience. So as much as I try to let their stories speak for themselves, I find sometimes myself, having to give my voice to their stories. And it's hard because I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to get it. I have to be, I'm always very self-aware, conscious about how my words come out when I'm telling their stories. So, because you have to be respectful. There is no room for interpretation or adding. There's nothing to add. It's their stories, and so they have to speak for themselves. But it can bring you down, especially, as I say, when they pass away. It says when my friend passed away a year ago, I haven't processed that yet. I haven't had the time because so much has happened, and her birthday is coming up. I know her birthday is coming up, and her best friend is here among us too, and so it's gonna be bittersweet. Because last year I sent her flowers. I would send her flowers every year, and I'm not sure where to send the flowers this year. So I miss her. I miss her a lot. I never thought, but I do miss her. It's hard because they become family. It's family. So when you have a good relationship with your family, of course, that's when you have a good relationship.
No, thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. I mean, one of the things you started out by identifying your meaning of peace building. And for me, my definition has always been, it's about relationships and, developing some healthy, positive relationships. And that's exactly what you've done. And so thank you for continuing to do that. And it's, you found something you're passionate about, and you've been able to continue to do that. And thank you for uplifting those voices. I just want to thank you, Gloria, for allowing us to learn today about your work and the mass amounts of wealth of knowledge to guide future peace-related projects that I look forward to seeing being developed. I truly appreciate you opening up about your experiences, and just, the tips that have come out of today's dialogue, a lot of great resources from our community here. And so thank you for your kindness and leadership in this field as we explore journeying into this profession. And last but not least, I do want to thank everyone who's joined us today. And we deeply appreciate your interest in supporting joining us to learn about exploring and journeying into profession through our Careers in Peace Building talk story. But thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye now.